What would you do if the future of your entire legacy depended on marrying someone you didn't trust? And what if the only person who saw you clearly was a stranger hiding secrets of his own? On a cold Friday night in downtown Chicago, the city pulsed with energy. Neon signs shimmered across slick pavement, and the laughter of strangers spilled out from busy sidewalks. Inside a dim, upscale lounge called the Ember Room, Sloane Prescott sat alone at the bar, a tumbler of whiskey in her hand. Her dark curls framed her face, eyes distant. At 28, she was the only child of the late Eleanor Prescott, whose name still echoed through real estate circles and socialite fundraisers. But tonight, the pressure of legacy weighed heavier than ever. Her grandfather, Walter Prescott, had issued a cruel deadline: marry soon or lose control of the company to cold-blooded relatives eager to gut it for profit. Sloane hated ultimatums. She hated men who used power to trap her even more. Trevor Lane had taught her that the hard way: 5 years of sweet words, big promises, and a knife in the back when he chose her inheritance over her heart. Now, she didn't trust anyone. Across the room, a man in a weathered leather jacket sat quietly at a corner table, nursing a beer. To the casual eye, he was just another face in the crowd. But behind those discount rack glasses sat Cole Merritt, billionaire CEO of Merritt Holdings, one of the city's most influential private firms. Cole was in hiding, not from the law, but from a vicious internal coup at his company. His board had turned on him, and his advisors insisted he disappear, blend in, wait for the right moment to reclaim control. But the moment he saw Sloane, something shifted. It wasn't just her beauty, it was the fire in her eyes, a fragile defiance barely covering heartbreak. He couldn't look away. Sloane noticed his stare. At first, it irritated her. She was used to being watched, but this was different. He wasn't ogling, he wasn't smirking, he was just there, present, quiet, steady. And for some reason, that annoyed her even more. Fueled by liquid courage and a need to feel something, she stood, crossed the lounge, and stopped at his table. The buzz of conversation faded around them as her sharp gaze locked with his. "What's your deal?" she asked, voice sharp, arms crossed. Cole blinked, caught off guard. "Just sitting here," he replied, calm and even. She let out a short, bitter laugh. "You look like a man with something to prove. Do you?" He tilted his head, intrigued. "Maybe. Depends what you're asking." That amused her. Or maybe it challenged her. With a smirk, she shrugged off her coat, letting it fall to the ground. Beneath it, she wore a delicate silk blouse, one that shimmered in the lounge's low light. A few heads turned, but she didn't care. She wanted to see what this quiet man would do. Would he leer? Flinch? Flee? But Cole didn't look away. He didn't look down. He watched her face, only her face, and a faint smile curled at the corner of his lips. "Your trouble," he said softly, almost to himself. Sloane raised an eyebrow. "And you're not?" She leaned in, voice low. "If you're a real man, show me." "Prove it," she said. It wasn't flirtation, it was a challenge. A reckless dare fueled by too much whiskey and not nearly enough trust. Cole rose slowly, his height catching her off guard. He stepped toward her, close enough that she caught the faint scent of cedar and something warm, clean, and unfamiliar. "What's your name?" he asked, voice low. "Sloane," she answered, lifting her chin. "And yours?" "Cole," he said. No hesitation. Sloane smirked again. "Cole sounds like a guy with nothing to lose." Then, because the night was spinning and her heart felt like it was cracking from the inside out, she said it, "Marry me. Right now. Let's go. Unless you're just another guy with empty words." It was ridiculous. Unhinged, a moment of rebellion against the weight pressing down on her life. She expected laughter. a sarcastic reply, a retreat. Instead, Cole stared at her, really looked, and said, simply, "All right." The next hour passed in a blur of streetlights and breathless laughter. They stumbled out of the Ember Room, her coat abandoned somewhere behind them, and wandered through the late-night streets of Chicago until they found a tiny wedding chapel tucked between a dry cleaner and a donut shop. The place looked like a leftover dream-faded wallpaper, flickering overhead lights, and a tired clerk who barely looked up as he handed them a license form. Cole signed with a steady hand. Sloane scribbled her name, giggling like she was watching someone else make the mistake. The officiant, a weary older man with deep-set eyes and a practiced monotone, read a short ceremony. "Do you take this woman?" "I do," Cole said, voice like gravel and steel. "Do you take this man?" "Sure," Sloane slurred, grinning. "Why not?" They exchanged plastic rings from a vending machine in the lobby. And just like that, it was done. They were married. Sloane woke up the next morning in a tiny, unfamiliar apartment on Chicago's South Side. Sunlight filtered through cracked blinds. Somewhere nearby, a coffee pot sputtered to life. She sat up on a sagging couch, groaning, as pain throbbed behind her eyes. In the kitchen, Cole stood barefoot in the same worn jacket from the night before, flipping pancakes like it was a Saturday tradition. "Morning, wife," he said casually, flashing a crooked smile. Sloane blinked at him. Then her eyes dropped to her hand, where a flimsy silver ring gleamed in the morning light. Panic kicked in. She scrambled for her purse, found a folded slip of paper, and read the words like they were written in another language. Marriage certificate, Sloane, Prescott, and Cole Merritt. Coent, legally wed, her stomach turned. What the hell did we do? Cole turned from the stove, unfazed. "Got married," he said. "Want breakfast?" She stood, waving the certificate like a weapon. "This is insane." "You're insane! Who are you?" He shrugged, sliding a pancake onto a plate. "Just a guy. Lives here. Works odd jobs. Nothing special." The casual tone made her angrier. She stalked closer, eyes narrowed. "You expect me to believe that? A guy with odd jobs in a studio apartment just marries a stranger on a whim?" Cole met her stare without blinking. "You asked. I said yes. I don't back down from a challenge." Sloane opened her mouth to argue, then shut it. He wasn't wrong. She had dared him. And he had followed through without flinching. But now what? She was married to a man she didn't know. A man who was far too calm for the chaos she'd thrown at him. Her phone buzzed. A message from her grandfather. "Come home. We need to discuss the company." Sloane groaned, then glanced at Cole, who was still flipping pancakes like he didn't just blow up her life. "This isn't over," she muttered, grabbing her purse. "We're going to fix this." "Sure," he said, completely unbothered. "But you should eat first. You look like you might pass out." She glared, then her stomach betrayed her with a loud growl. Without a word, she dropped into the nearest chair and picked up the plate he offered. The pancake was warm, fluffy, way better than it had any right to be. And as she ate in silence, watching him hum a quiet tune and sip his coffee, she had the strangest feeling that Cole Merritt wasn't who he claimed to be. And for the first time in years, Sloane Prescott felt something she didn't recognize, something dangerous. Maybe even hope. She stepped out of Cole's apartment a few minutes later, the crumpled certificate shoved in her purse, the city buzzing around her like normal. She'd gotten married. And this time, she didn't have a plan. A stranger. A man living in a run-down walk-up, flipping pancakes like a seasoned chef, and treating a spontaneous marriage like it was just another Thursday night. It didn't make sense. As the cab pulled away from the faded brick building, Sloane Prescott leaned back against the seat, rubbing her temples. Her head still pounded, not just from the whiskey, but from the weight of what she'd done. She had married a man she barely knew, and now she had to face her grandfather. Back at the Prescott family penthouse overlooking Lakeshore Drive, Walter Prescott sat in his usual leather armchair, the Chicago Tribune spread across his lap. At 75, he was still razor sharp, his silver eyes, capable of cutting straight through any excuse. When Sloane stepped into the room, she immediately braced herself. "You're late," Walter said, without looking up. "Rough night," she replied, dropping her bag on the velvet couch. He folded the newspaper with a deliberate slowness and peered at her over the rim of his glasses. "You look like hell. What's going on?" She hesitated. She could lie, say she was working late, got stuck in traffic, whatever, but Walter Prescott had an uncanny ability to smell out a lie before it even left your mouth. "I got married," she blurted out. The old man's eyebrows shot up like they'd been spring-loaded. "Married? To who?" Sloane swallowed hard. "Some guy. Cole Merritt." Walter leaned forward, intrigued. "Merritt? Never heard of him. What does he do?" She shrugged, trying to play it off. "Says he works odd jobs, lives in South Shore." He frowned, then chuckled. "South Shore? You married a nobody? Well, at least he's not one of those slick Wall Street parasites sniffing around the company. Bring him here. I want to meet him." Sloane blinked. "You're kidding. It's done now." Walter waved a hand. "You're married. Make it work. The board's watching, and having a husband might calm the sharks." Sloane stared at him, stunned. Her life wasn't a PR strategy, but arguing with Walter Prescott was like yelling at a stone lion. She turned and walked out, seething. If this was going to get fixed, she'd have to do it herself. Meanwhile, in his cramped apartment, Cole Merritt stood at the sink, rinsing out the breakfast dishes. He wore a relaxed grin, still thinking about Sloane's firecracker exit. She was a storm in high heels, all sharp edges and wounded pride. He hadn't meant to marry her, but when she dared him, something had snapped into place. After weeks of laying low, dodging the power-hungry wolves circling Merritt, holding Sloane Prescott was the first real thing he'd encountered in a long time. His phone buzzed. Michael Reed, his longtime assistant, was calling. "You're still holed up in South Shore?" Michael asked, voice all business. "Yep," Cole said, drying his hands. "I got married last night." Dead silence. "You what?" Michael finally choked. "To who?" "Sloane Prescott." Another long pause. "Are you out of your damn mind?" Michael said. "Prescott Enterprises? You married their heiress. You just made yourself and her a massive target. If the wrong people find out, let them," Cole said, a smirk in his voice. "She's tougher than she looks." Back at Prescott Enterprises, Sloane spent the day buried in meetings, but her mind kept wandering. Cole Merritt. Who was he really? No one from the South Side with odd jobs just marries a stranger on a whim, and he didn't flinch, not once. That night, unable to let it go, she returned to his apartment. She knocked. He opened the door, wearing an apron streaked with flour. "Hey, wife," he said, grinning. "Hungry?" Her heart did a weird flip. "We need to talk," she said, folding her arms across her chest. He nodded and turned back inside, pulling a tray of cookies from the oven. "Sure. Want one?" The smell was intoxicating, warm vanilla and cinnamon. She tried to resist. Failed. Took one. It was perfect. "Okay. Seriously," she said, annoyed at how good it was. "How do you do this?" "Practice," he said casually. "Learned from my mom. She loved to bake." Sloane scanned the room again. Sparse but neat. A couch, a small TV. But then she saw the books. Not fiction, not cookbooks. Finance, corporate strategy, organizational behavior. She narrowed her eyes. "You don't add up," she said slowly. "You live like this. But you read this? You cook like a chef. You read finance books for fun. And you didn't even blink when I asked you to marry me." Sloane crossed her arms, eyes narrowing. "What's your story?" Cole shrugged, leaning casually against the counter. "No story. Just me." "Yeah," she muttered. "I don't buy it. But whatever, my grandfather wants to meet you tomorrow. Don't embarrass me." He nodded, serious. "Wouldn't dream of it." She turned toward the door, but his voice stopped her. "Sloane?" She looked back. "You're kind of beautiful when you're angry," he said, his voice soft. She rolled her eyes, cheeks warming despite herself. Save it. And then she left. The next day, Cole showed up at the Prescott penthouse in a pressed button-down and clean jeans, still playing the part simple guy, casual charm. But Sloane could see it the way he moved, the way he scanned the room. He didn't miss a detail. Walter Prescott met him in the study, gruff, measured, razor-sharp, in both mind and words. "So, you're the husband?" he asked, arms folded. "Yes, sir," Cole replied. "Calm, grounded. That's me." "What do you do?" Cole gave a small shrug. "Bit of this, bit of that. Fix things. Keep things moving." Walter grunted. "Honest work. That's good. My granddaughter needs someone steady. Don't screw it up." Cole smiled, unshaken. "Wouldn't dream of it." From across the room, Sloane watched the exchange torn between irritation and an involuntary flicker of admiration. He was good at this, whatever this was. That night, she stayed late at Prescott Enterprises. The rain hadn't stopped since afternoon. The city outside her window looked blurred and bruised. Then, suddenly he was there. Cole, soaked to the bone, umbrella in one hand and a paper bag in the other. "I figured you didn't eat," he said, setting the bag on her desk. "Brought Ty." She stared at him, caught completely off guard. "Why are you here? You skipped lunch. Can't have my wife passing out at her desk." Sloane wanted to tell him to go, that she didn't need anyone, but no one had ever just shown up for her like that. Not like this. She took the food. They ate in silence, rain tapping gently against the windows, and for a moment, just one quiet moment, she let herself feel safe. The peace didn't last. The next morning, a small blue box from Tiffany's arrived at her office. Inside was a necklace, silver, delicate, exquisite. A note tucked beneath it read, "For my wife." Sloane's heart slammed against her ribs. This wasn't a joke shop trinket. This was real. Price tag, real. She stormed back to South Shore, adrenaline hot in her veins. Cole opened the door mid-bite of a sandwich. "You like it?" he asked with a grin. "How did you pay for this?" she demanded, holding up the velvet box like it might explode. He shrugged. "Saved up. Took a while." "You're lying," she said sharply. "No one buys a Tiffany necklace on an odd job's salary." Cole's expression didn't shift. He stepped closer, voice calm. "Maybe I'm just good at saving." She glared at him, but her pulse betrayed her, jumping at his nearness, his quiet confidence. Then her phone rang. Claire, her assistant. "Sloane, Trevor Lane is back in town. He's asking about you." Her stomach dropped. Trevor, the man who'd broken her heart and nearly destroyed her. She ended the call and looked at Cole. "Trouble?" he asked, his voice gentle. "Nothing you need to worry about," she said quickly, but her voice trembled. He didn't press. "I'm here. If you need me." She walked away, rattled. Trevor's return meant danger, and Cole was still a mystery. Too many secrets. Too much unknown. A few days later, she dropped by Cole's apartment unannounced and found him fixing a leaky faucet in the kitchen, sleeves rolled, forearms strong, steady hands. "Want to help?" he asked, grinning. She didn't, but she sat anyway, watching. He hummed while working clumsy at first, but then tightened the valve with perfect precision. "You're full of surprises," she said. "Good ones, I hope," he replied, drying his hands. She didn't answer, but something in her shifted. Then came the shock. He tossed his jacket onto the couch. A small paper receipt fluttered out from the pocket. She picked it up. It was for the necklace. Paid in cash, no name, no card, just the exact amount. Sloane stared at the receipt in her hand, her breath catching. A Tiffany necklace, paid in full, in cash. She confronted Cole that night, the slip of paper clutched tightly in her fist like a piece of evidence in a trial. "Explain this," she said, stepping into his apartment. He took one look at the receipt, then at her. "I told you. I saved up." "Stop lying," she snapped. "You live in a cramped apartment in South Shore and claim to scrape by doing odd jobs. No one around here has this kind of money." Cole stepped closer, his usual smile fading into something serious. "Maybe I'm not what you think," he said quietly, "but I'm still your husband." Sloane's pulse stuttered. She wanted to pull away, to dismiss him, but his words hung in the air, tethering her to something she didn't want to name. She left without another word, the mystery of Cole Merritt burning in her chest. The next morning, Sloane sat in her office at Prescott Enterprises, the Tiffany necklace resting on her desk, like a question mark carved in silver. She couldn't make sense of him. He lived modestly, talked simply, claimed to live paycheck to paycheck. But then there was this. The necklace. The way he looked at her, not like a man playing a part, but like someone who actually saw her. And slowly, dangerously, it was chipping at the walls she'd built ever since Trevor Lane blew her heart to pieces 5 years ago. She shoved the necklace aside and focused on the contracts in front of her. Work was solid, predictable. Work didn't lie. Her phone buzzed, dragging her back. "Walter Prescott, dinner. Tonight," he said curtly. "Bring your husband. No excuses," Sloane sighed. "Grandpa, I told you this marriage isn't temporary or not. He's family now." 7 p.m. "Don't be late." Click. She didn't get the chance to argue. Walter had latched on to Cole like he was the solution to everything. And she had no idea how to tell him the truth, that the marriage was impulsive, temporary, and that she still didn't even know who Cole really was. That evening, Cole arrived at the penthouse holding a paper bag. Sloane met him at the door, arms crossed. "What's that?" He grinned and pulled out a homemade pie. "Dessert, thought it might help." She rolled her eyes, but a flicker of amusement betrayed her. "You're too good at this." "Just trying to survive dinner," he said with a wink. Inside, Walter was waiting in the dining room, towering in presence even while seated. He gave Cole a long once-over, then grunted. "You clean up all right." "Thanks, sir," Cole said in a steady voice. "Call me Walter." "Sit." Dinner was tense. Walter launched a quiet interrogation while slicing into his steak. Cole, as always, played it cool. "Grew up in a small town," he said. "Moved here. Found work where I could." Sloane watched carefully, waiting for him to trip up. He didn't. If anything, he was too smooth, too composed. Walter seemed impressed. "Honest man," he said, nodding toward Sloane. "Could have done worse." She forced a polite smile. "Sure." After dessert, Walter pulled her aside, in the hallway. "I like him," he said. "You would," she muttered. "He keeps you grounded. Don't screw this up." "It's not real, Grandpa," she hissed. "It was a mistake. Real or not, the board's restless. A husband brings stability. Keep him around for now." Sloane clenched her jaw. Arguing was pointless. When they left the penthouse, Cole walked her to her car. "Your grandfather's intense. He is so bob," he said with a chuckle. "But he cares about you." Sloane stopped. "Don't pretend you understand us. This isn't your world." His smile faltered. "Maybe not. But I'm here." She looked away. His sincerity was unsettling, too real, too easy to like. And that scared her. She climbed into her car, leaving him behind in the golden haze of the streetlight. The next morning, something felt off. Sloane stood in the office bathroom, gripping the edges of the sink. Her reflection looked pale, shaken. Then a wave of nausea hit her so suddenly she barely made it to the stall in time. She wiped her mouth, heart racing. No, no way. But the idea was already taking root, and it terrified her. Her reflection stared back, pale and uncertain. It can't be, Sloane thought, gripping the edge of the sink. It's not possible. But the truth hit her like a train. She hadn't been with anyone since Trevor. And even that had been months before the night she married Cole. Still, panic swelled in her chest as she slipped out the back of Prescott Enterprises, ducked into a corner pharmacy, and returned to her office with a paper bag she hoped no one noticed. She locked the door. Minutes later, she sat frozen at her desk, staring down at two pink lines. Pregnant. Her world spun. Logically, it had to be Trevor's. The timing didn't line up with Cole. Not yet. Her fingers trembled. Her stomach churned. But she told no one, not Walter, not Cole. This was her burden, and she would carry it alone. That night, she attended a charity gala in the Gold Coast, a glittering event full of polished smiles and hidden agendas. Cole had insisted on coming, showing up in a borrowed black suit that somehow looked tailor-made. Sloane avoided him most of the evening, flitting from one small-talk conversation to another, trying to pretend everything was under control. Then she heard the voice she'd hoped never to hear again. Sloane Prescott. She froze. Trevor Lane. Slick, handsome, and as cold as ever. "Miss me?" he asked, stepping into her path with that infuriating smirk. She stiffened. "Get lost, Trevor," he laughed. "Heard you got married. Some guy from South Shore? Slumming it a bit, aren't we?" Before she could answer, Cole appeared beside her. "Is there a problem?" he asked, voice low and even. Trevor smirked. "Who's this? Your new watchdog?" Cole didn't blink. "Husband." The word landed heavy in the space between them. Trevor leaned in, voice venomous. "She'll toss you aside. She always does." Sloane clenched her fists, but before she could lash out, Cole stepped forward. "Walk away," he said, calm but sharp as steel. Trevor held his gaze for one heartbeat too long, then scoffed and walked off. Sloane turned on Cole, furious. "I don't need you fighting my battles," he shrugged. Didn't fight, just stood there. She glared at him, but the anger didn't stick. He hadn't caused a scene. He hadn't postured. He'd just been there. And it rattled her more than she wanted to admit. But the night wasn't done testing her. Across the room, Vanessa Pierce zeroed in on Cole like a lioness spotting prey. She floated over in a red silk gown that clung to her every curve. "You must be Sloane's mystery man," she purred, fingers brushing Cole's arm. "I'm Vanessa. We should talk." Sloane watched from a few feet away, heart twisting in a way she refused to name. Cole smiled politely. "Nice to meet you. I'm with my wife." Vanessa laughed, undeterred. "Wives come and go. Call me if you ever get bored." She slipped a card into his hand and sauntered off, hips swaying like a challenge. Sloane marched over, snatched the card from his fingers, and tore it in half. "Don't even think about it." He raised an eyebrow. Wasn't going to, but she stormed off, hating how much it had bothered her. By the next morning, the whispers had already started. Trevor had planted a story Sloane Prescott back with her ex, cheating on her husband. Colleagues glanced at her sideways. Her assistant, Claire, pulled her aside. "People are talking," Claire said quietly. "It's just gossip, right?" Sloane nodded. "Of course." But her chest tightened. If this touched the company, it could cost everything. She drove straight to Cole's apartment, found him in the living room, tinkering with a broken lamp. "Trevor's spreading lies," she said, pacing. "Says I'm back with him. That I never left." Cole set the lamp down, frowning. But you're not. Obviously not. But it's a mess. I can't let this touch the company. What do you need? He asked, wiping his hands on a rag. She hesitated. Nothing. Just stay out of it. I'll handle him. Cole nodded, but something in his eyes said he had no intention of staying out of it. That evening, he showed up at her office. Again, with a thermos in hand. You're stressed? He said simply, pouring her a cup of soup. She took it, the warmth seeping into her fingers and her chest. You don't have to do this, she said quietly. Yeah, he said. I do. He met her gaze, steady and unshaken. You're my wife, wife. The word hung in the air between them, suddenly heavy, suddenly real. Sloane sipped the soup slowly, her defenses cracking just slightly under the weight of exhaustion and unspoken truths. Days later, the truth she'd tried to outrun caught up with her. The test had only hinted at it. The clinic confirmed it. 6 weeks. Too early for Cole, too late to deny. It's Trevor's, a ghost from her past she hadn't meant to carry. Sloane sat in her car outside the clinic, fingers clenched around the steering wheel. Tears stinging her eyes. She couldn't keep it. Not now, not with the company under fire, not with her world unraveling. But the thought of ending it hurt more than she expected. She needed someone to ground her. So she drove. Cole opened his door to find her on the verge of braking. You okay? He asked gently, the concern clear in his eyes. She shook her head and stepped inside. No. But don't ask. He didn't. Instead, he handed her a blanket, led her to the couch, and sat beside her in silence. No pressure, no questions, just presence. And in that moment, she didn't deserve it, but she needed it. The breaking point came at a board meeting. Walter Prescott's expression was carved from stone. The rumors are out of control, he growled. Fix it, Sloane, or I will. She nodded, barely holding herself together. That night, she found Cole on his rooftop, watching the city lights flicker, and for the first time, she let some of the walls fall. Trevor's ruining me, she admitted, voice raw. And I don't trust you either. His face shifted hurt, not angry. I'm not your enemy, he said softly. But you don't trust anyone, do you? She stood, hands trembling. I can't. Not after Trevor. Not after everything. She left, slamming the door like it might stop the chaos spinning inside her. She couldn't stay not with a child tying her to the past, and a husband who wore masks she couldn't read. But even as she walked away, his voice echoed in her mind. I'm not your enemy. Was she running from him or from herself? That weekend, Sloane Prescott stood alone in the grand ballroom of the Donovan Foundation Gala, an event that drew Chicago's elite like moths to a chandelier. Her black gown shimmered under the soft lights. Her presence was calculated. She hadn't invited Cole. The fight still stung, and she couldn't handle his gaze tonight. Not with a baby inside her, not with Trevor circling like a vulture. She clutched her glass of sparkling water, pretending it was wine, scanning the crowd with a practiced smile. This night was about damage control for Prescott Enterprises, for her public image. Not for feelings. The lights dimmed. A hush spread across the room. A man stepped onto the stage. Sloane's heart stilled. Cole, but not the Cole she knew in hoodies and worn jeans. This Cole wore a charcoal suit that fit like second skin. His shoulders squared, his expression sharp, assured. The whispers started immediately. Who is that? He looks familiar. Oh my God, that's... Good evening, Cole said, his voice carrying through the hushed room. I'm Cole Merritt, CEO of Merritt Holdings. Thank you for being here tonight. Sloane's glass slipped from her fingers, cold water splashing across her dress. CEO? Her husband. The man she thought was living paycheck to paycheck. Hiding this? All along. On stage, Cole's gaze swept the crowd and landed on her. There's been speculation about me, he continued, about who I am and what I want. A pause. Let me be clear. This company is my life, but so is my wife, the ballroom gasped. Sloane couldn't breathe. Sloane Prescott is my wife, and I will protect her with everything I have. The room buzzed like a live wire. She felt her knees weaken. And then, Trevor. He stepped forward from the crowd, that same smirk etched across his face. Nice story, he called. Too bad she's still mine. The words sliced through her like a blade. Cole's jaw locked. Step aside, Lane, he said, voice flat and cold. Trevor chuckled and melted into the crowd like smoke. Sloane didn't wait. She stormed backstage, heart pounding, dress damp from the glass, emotions unraveling. She found Cole behind the curtain, loosening his tie like nothing had happened. What the hell was that? She demanded. He turned to her, calm as ever, mask perfectly in place. The truth? Sloane laughed, the sound sharp and bitter. You've been lying to me since the day we met, CEO. You let me believe you were just some guy fixing lamps and flipping pancakes. Cole stepped forward, voice low, controlled. I didn't want you to see me as a title. I wanted you to see me. She shook her head, tears burning behind her eyes. I don't even know who you are. And now, you've made me a target. He reached for her. She stepped back. I'm fixing it, he said. Just trust me. Her eyes flared. I can't. Outside the ballroom, the night grew colder. Trevor Lane was waiting. He appeared from the shadows like a bad dream, lips curled into that same venomous smile. You're in deep now, he said, circling her like a vulture. But I can help. Sloane didn't move. Her fists clenched. Get me Merritt Holdings' bid for the Riverline project, he continued. One file, that's all. And I'll kill every rumor floating around this city. She stared at him, horrified. You're insane. He leaned in, his breath sour against her cheek. Do it, or I tell the world you're carrying my child. Her stomach turned. Her hand flew to her abdomen. How did he know? You're bluffing, she said, voice barely steady. Trevor's smile widened. Try me. And then he was gone, vanishing into the crowd. Sloane stood frozen. The bid would devastate Cole. It would hand Trevor the very leverage he was drooling for. But the baby, the rumors, her company, everything was unraveling. Back inside, Cole found her near the back hallway. His jacket was gone, sleeves rolled up, concern etched across his face. You're pale, he said. What happened? Nothing, she whispered. He didn't believe her, but didn't press. Stay close, he murmured. Something's not right. Later that night, as the event began to wind down, Sloane slipped away for air. The parking garage was empty. Echoes bounced off concrete walls. Then came the footsteps. She turned and 3 men emerged from the shadows. Hardened faces, cold eyes. Prescott, one of them growled. Mr. Lane sends his regards. Her pulse spiked. She stepped back, fumbling for her phone. Stay back, she warned, dialing. Cole! He picked up. Help, she whispered. Garage. Now. The men lunged. Sloane swung her purse, hitting one square in the chest. Another grabbed her arm and twisted it. Pain exploded up her shoulder as she screamed. Then Cole was there. A blur of fists and fury. He tackled the biggest thug, slamming him against a car. Get your hands off her! Another man swung. Cole ducked, landed a punch that snapped the attacker's head sideways. Blood ran down his knuckles, but he didn't stop. The third guy bolted. Cole turned to the one still gripping her. Let her go. There was something dangerous in his voice, something final. The man hesitated, then shoved Sloane aside and ran. She stumbled, catching herself against a support pillar. Cole rushed to her, panting. You okay? She nodded, trembling. You're hurt, she said, seeing the gash above his eyebrow, blood streaking down his face. He ignored it, pulling her into his arms. "I've got you," he whispered, his voice cracking. Security arrived too late. The men had vanished. Cole slumped against a parked car, blood dripping freely now. Sloane dropped to her knees beside him, panic rising. "Stay with me," she begged, pressing her scarf to his wound. He smiled faintly, not going anywhere. Then his eyes fluttered shut, and he collapsed. An ambulance screamed into the garage. Paramedics lifted him onto a stretcher. Sloane climbed in beside him, her gown stained with his blood, hands shaking. At the hospital, she paced the waiting room, every minute stretching into agony. He'd taken the hit for her. Again. The guilt was a tidal wave. Hours later, a doctor finally emerged. "Moderate concussion," he said. "He took a serious blow, but he should wake up soon." Sloane nodded, breath catching in her throat. She entered the room quietly and sat beside his bed. He looked so still, so calm. Too calm, his face bruised, his temple bandaged. She reached for his hand. "I thought you were a liar," she whispered, voice cracking. "But you're the only one who's been here." Tears fell freely, and for once, Sloane didn't stop them. She'd run from trust, from connection, but Cole had chased her down. He had bled for her. Her free hand drifted to her stomach. The baby, she had been so sure it was Trevor's. A painful tie to a past she wanted to forget. But now, the timeline didn't fit. The clinic had said 6 weeks, but that night the bar, the chapel, the blurred hours afterward, could it be Cole's? A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. A nurse entered, holding a clipboard. "We ran some tests," she said. "You're about 8 weeks along, Miss Prescott." Sloane's breath caught. 8 weeks, not 6. Her gaze flew to Cole, still unconscious, not Trevor's, his. Relief crashed into her, sweeping her breath away. Then came fear, guilt, and something deeper, something close to joy. She turned to Cole, her voice a shaky whisper. "You idiot," she murmured, gripping his hand. "Why didn't you tell me who you were?" All this time, she had been blind, so consumed by her own pain, she'd missed the truth right in front of her. He had hidden his power, but never his heart, the pancakes, the soup, the quiet way he protected her even when she didn't ask. He'd been loving her the whole time. Cole stirred with a groan, his eyes blinking open. "Sloane," he rasped, managing a faint smile. She leaned in, tears slipping free. "You scared the hell out of me," she said, brushing hair from his forehead. "Don't you dare do that again." He chuckled, then winced. No promises. "You're a billionaire?" she whispered, still stunned. "A CEO, and you let me yell at you in a rundown apartment in South Shore." He shrugged, weak but warm. "Worth it," she laughed through the tears, a soft, broken, healing sound. "I'm keeping you," she said, "but no more secrets." His fingers tightened around hers. "Deal." The door flew open. Trevor Lane strolled in, smug and uninvited. "How touching," he sneered, clapping slowly. "But it's too late. I got the Riverline bid. You're done, Merritt." Sloane stood, fury blazing in her chest. "Get out," Trevor smirked. "Enjoy your little hospital victory. It won't last." He turned, disappearing like the ghost he was. Sloane looked back at Cole. His hand found hers again. "Let him have it," he said softly. "I've already got what matters." She sat beside him, her voice a whisper against his shoulder. "We're a mess," he smiled. "Yeah, but we're our mess." Outside, the city pulsed on, unaware of the war they'd just survived. But in that quiet hospital room, everything had shifted. He wasn't just some reckless stranger anymore. He was hers, and she wasn't letting go. Later that morning, sunlight filtered through the blinds, casting soft stripes across the bed. The beeping of machines hummed gently in the background. Sloane hadn't left his side since he woke. Cole looked tired, bruised, but there was light in his eyes as they settled on her. She brushed a strand of hair back from his forehead. "You look terrible," she said, voice teasing, but thick with emotion. "Thanks," he said with a wince. "You look beautiful." She smiled, really smiled, the kind she hadn't felt in years. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, the words sincere, "for hiding who I was. I thought it would protect you. My world, it's messy, ruthless. I didn't want you caught in it." She nodded slowly. "You're a billionaire who cooks pancakes in a South Shore apartment." "I should have known something was off," he grinned. "Crazy, right? Crazy about me," she said, echoing his words from before. He laughed softly. She squeezed his hand. "No more secrets. Promise me." He held her gaze. "I promise." Just then the door opened again. Walter Prescott entered, leaning on his cane, eyes scanning the room. He looked older in the morning light, but his expression was soft. "Word is, you took quite a beating, son," he said, stepping closer. Cole nodded faintly. Walter's lips curled into a rare, approving smile. "Good thing you're tough." Cole sat up, slightly, in the hospital bed, his voice rough but steady. "Had to be, sir. Couldn't let her down." Walter Prescott gave a rare grunt of approval. "Call me Walter. And you," he turned to Sloane, "stop fighting this. He's a keeper." She rolled her eyes, but her lips curved. "I know," she said softly. Walter patted Cole's shoulder. "Rest up. I want great grandkids someday." And with that, he left them in a quiet that felt easy. Sloane rose and walked to the window, the city skyline lit like a constellation of possibilities. "Trevor has the Riverline bid," she said, not turning around. "He thinks he's won." Cole watched her, calm. "Let him. It's just money." She spun to face him. "Just money? That's your company." He shrugged. "I've got more than enough. Besides, I'm starting something new, a foundation. Under your name." She blinked. "What?" "For kids. Families? Whatever you want. The Riverline payout will fund it." Her breath caught. He was giving up a fortune not from weakness, but from choice. For her. "You're insane," she said, voice cracking. He smiled. "Maybe. But if it makes you happy, worth it." She crossed the room and sat beside him again, heart pounding. "I'm pregnant," she said, the words slipping out like a breath. 8 weeks. It's yours." His eyes widened, then softened. "Mine?" She nodded, tears in her eyes. "I thought it was Trevor's. At first I was scared. But it's you. It's us." Cole reached for her, pulling her into his arms despite the pain. "We're having a baby," he whispered into her hair. She laughed into his shoulder. "Yeah, we are." He kissed her forehead, lips lingering. "Guess we're stuck with each other now." She pulled back, smirking. "Don't get cocky. I could still divorce you." He laughed, that deep, boyish sound she'd come to love. "Try it. I'll just win you back." Days later, Cole was discharged. Sloane brought him home to her apartment overlooking the East River, with its sleek finishes and towering windows. He stood in the kitchen, still bandaged, stirring a pot of soup. "You're supposed to be resting," she said, arms crossed. "I am," he grinned. "Cooking is relaxing." She stepped closer, brushing a hand against his cheek. "You're ridiculous." He turned off the stove and faced her fully. "And you're stuck with me." "Good," she whispered. They kissed slow and certain, while the city murmured outside their window. That weekend, they strolled through Central Park, leaves falling gold and red around them. Cole held her hand like it was something sacred. "What's next?" he asked. Sloane glanced at him, the man who'd gone from a stranger in a bar to the father of her child. "We figure it out," she said. "You, me, the baby." "No more running," he nodded. "No more hiding. They paused near the lake, the sun slipping beneath the skyline. She rested her head on his shoulder and felt the weight of the past begin to lift. Trevor was gone quietly, forced out of the city with Cole's silent power. Vanessa Pierce had disappeared into the gossip pages. Walter was already planning a nursery in his townhouse. At home, they cooked dinner together. Pasta and laughter. Sloane caught Cole sneaking a taste. She swatted at his hand. "Patience," she scolded, grinning. He pulled her into his arms, twirling her through the kitchen. "I can't wait. Not for dinner. Not for us." She laughed light and free for the first time in years. They ate on the couch, plates in their laps, talking about names, dreams, the messy beauty of a future they never saw coming. Later, they stood on the balcony as twilight fell. The city sprawled below them, a quiet hum of life and light. Cole wrapped an arm around her, steady and warm. "Love's not about knowing everything," he said, voice soft. "It's about trusting through the unknown." Sloane looked up at him, her heart full. "You're right," she whispered, "and I trust you." He smiled and kissed her under the stars. They had started as strangers built on challenge, chaos, and secrets. But somehow, they'd found something real. It wasn't perfect. It was better. It was theirs. Sometimes the messiest beginnings lead to the most beautiful endings. Love doesn't wait for perfection. It grows in the spaces where we choose each other anyway.